The Convenience Store by the Sea by Sonoko Machida. Translated by Bruno Navasky. Chapter 4. A soft egg porridge for a hard old man. When he woke up in the morning, his wife wasn't there. In the living room, a rolled omelette and a piece of grilled salt mackerel were waiting for him under cling film on the dining table. Miso soup was in a pot in the kitchen. After reheating them, Takeji Otsuka ate his breakfast alone. A faint scent of detergent drifted in through the wide-open patio doors from the laundry drying outside. He took a quick look. Another fine day. Come to think of it, he remembered the TV weather girl saying that the clear autumn weather would continue for a while. The woman, who was younger than his daughter, had said what perfect weather it was for going out, but he had no particular plans, so it didn't matter much to him one way or the other. Takeji finished his meal quickly and left the dishes to soak in a tub in the kitchen sink. He turned on the TV, listening while he read the paper. He didn't look at the screen until the morning soaps began. He's got hooked on one of them somehow. The main character was a father, a joker with an overly sympathetic personality, beloved by everyone. Except Takeji. Something about the setup annoyed him. There were moments when the father seemed happy to be inconvenienced by his daughter's self-indulgent lifestyle instead of correcting her. Didn't he take any pride in being a father? Or a man? Shouldn't he be ashamed of his failure as a parent to educate his own child properly? Even now, he was tossing off silly wisecracks while his daughter yapped angrily at him. It was the sort of behavior that caused all the trouble in the first place. Damn it. Why do I let this show get me so worked up? Junko. He called out without thinking, then closed his mouth. His wife Junko wasn't there. She'd gone to her part-time job at the supermarket. The job was in the deli section, so morning shifts started early. She would come home in the afternoon, but then rush out again almost immediately, talking about the activities in her women's group. Evening was the only time they could be together, face to face. The spacious living room was silent but for the voices from the television. Takeji let out a little sigh. Why was he passing his days in such emptiness? Takeji had worked continuously all his life at one company, an auto parts factory, from college graduation to retirement. The mandatory retirement age was 60, but he had joined the company's reemployment program and worked 5 extra years. It wasn't right for a man to let his wife and child struggle through life. He had always been guided in his work by that belief. He relinquished his personal days to the company as a matter of course and devoted long hours to entertaining clients. All household matters were entrusted to his wife, Junko, including the upbringing of their only daughter, Nanao. But that was the natural division of labor between husband and wife, and nothing could be done about that. Men went out and earned a living, women took care of the house. That's just how it was. Junior colleagues at work would laugh at him and ask what era he was from, but thanks to his hard work, Junko had spent many decades as a homemaker, while Nanao had been able to attend the college of her choice. He was also able to put together a modest nest egg and move them to a retirement home in an apartment building dedicated to seniors. Even better, the place was in Kitakyushu, the #1 retirement destination for senior country life. Kitakyushu was nestled between the mountains and the sea, surrounded by the beauty of nature. Despite that, it had a well-maintained infrastructure, and the cost of living there was low. It was a terminal for the Shinkansen bullet train and close enough to the large city of Hakata that it didn't feel like the remote countryside or inconvenient in any way. It was an ideal town for Takiji, who had wanted to live quietly in a calm and convenient location after retirement. Majiko, the area around the harbor, was particularly nice. The streets of the town were lined with buildings from the good old days, and beyond the picturesque townscape lay the clear ocean waters. And the seafood was delicious. It was a completely different atmosphere from Nagoya, where he had been born and raised, but he was sure they could do reasonably well in the place. He had every expectation of a frugal and tranquil life there, together with Junko. When he'd made the decision to move, he'd had no doubt that his second life would be the stuff of his dreams. So how then had it come to this? Takiji's eyes traced the text in the newspaper as he thought. Well, for starters, Junko had changed dramatically, it seemed, right after they moved here. The Junko of the present was an entirely different person from the Junko who had quietly and faithfully cared for their home back then, never pushy or presumptuous in the slightest way. It was impossible to imagine the old Junko taking a part-time job without consulting him, let alone her intense dedication to the activities of the building's Ladies' Association. She didn't even go to PTA meetings back then. Of course, that was partially because Takiji didn't approve. It was unthinkable to him for a woman caring for a home and family to just leave them behind and go out for drinks. But since they had moved here, Junko actively attended both the part-time staff get-togethers at work and the cocktails with the building ladies. Up until recently, Takiji had been her top priority, but now she had made him into her house sitter. "What have you got to complain about?" Nanao, his daughter, had said dismissively. "She does all the housework before she goes out. She even cooks your meals." Nanao had married 3 years ago. She lived in Osaka, but perhaps because she had no children, she came to visit once a month. She spoke sharply to Takiji, who was harboring some resentment towards Junko. "You've really been keeping Mother under lock and key. Let her be herself. Give her a little freedom." He didn't intend to imprison his wife, and he didn't remember ever forcing her to be a different person. He just acted appropriately for a working man in society, and he wanted Junko to do what was natural for a woman watching over her family and home. Was there anything wrong with that? But when he said that, Nanao responded with a warning. "Have you heard of gray divorce? A man who neglects his family's needs gets thrown away, father." Takiji laughed it off as nonsense, but Junko didn't laugh. She just apologetically said, "Let me do as I like." They're both making fun of me, he thought. It's not like I've been oppressing Junko all this time. I took us all on family trips every year, and she had the clothes she wanted, visits to the beauty parlor, no limits. She had plenty of freedom. Why do they have to make me out to be the bad guy? Takiji had more to say, but realizing that Nanao was just going to take his wife's side, he swallowed his words. Instead, he said, "It's fine. Do as you like. I guess if I can have a second life, then you can too. I can understand that much, at least." But if he were being honest, he didn't understand. Every morning there was a fresh whirlpool of dissatisfaction in his chest. How was he to find an outlet for those feelings? Maybe I'll go get a drink of coffee or something. When he was alone in the room with nobody there, he quickly started to feel depressed. Takiji left the house, taking nothing with him but his wallet. Given that he had chosen it for its lovely street scenes, Mijiko was the ideal place for a walk. There were any number of stylish cafes, too, dotting the area. But just to wander in, a single man on his own? That would be far too uncomfortable. Instead, there was a little coffee shop he'd found just behind their apartment building that had become his regular spot. The old proprietor ran it by himself, and there were always strains of jazz music playing lightly in the background. The interior was somewhat old-fashioned, and with nothing flashy there to catch the eye, what the kids these days called Instagrammable. There were few customers. Takiji liked it that way. The only thing was, he felt like a bit of an outsider there. It seemed the proprietor was into fishing, and the walls were festooned with fish prints and photos of fishing boats. And then, too, he and the regulars were always waxing poetic about where they fished and what they had caught. Takiji had no experience fishing, so he was left out of the conversation entirely. Today, too, a small cluster of customers were going on about meimaji, baby horse mackerel that were small enough to cook and eat whole, and what quantities each of the several patrons had caught. He settled into a window seat, ordered a coffee, and for the second time that day ran his eyes over the newspaper he had already read at home. He needed a hobby, but how to find one? Takiji looked at a feature in the paper about a dance group for seniors and considered the question. Until now, he had never thought much about anything except work. The days came and went easily enough, and he had no complaints. But now he wanted something to kill time. Even better if it were something he could banter about with others, like the group gathered here. The coffee came, and he drank it slowly. His eye fell upon a young mother pushing a stroller outside the shop. When Nanao has a child, perhaps I'll. He quickly extinguished the idle thought. It seemed Nanao had decided not to have children. He didn't know what her reasons were. She had just told him that she had discussed it with her husband and they had made the decision. I have my own life. I'm not giving birth to a child just to make you happy, Father. Some of his junior colleagues at the company had chosen a childless life as well. At some point, someone had explained to him that there were couples who deliberately avoided having children. They were called dinks, double income, no kids. Of course, people led all different sorts of lives. He accepted that. But why was it that he felt so lonely when he heard it from his own daughter's mouth? He searched for the right words to explain it to her, but all he could think to say was that having children was a good thing, and just that was enough to make Nanao angry. You're always saying that you raised me, Father, but you didn't actually do anything. You think you can just shell out the money and that's enough? Were you there for my first day of school? My track meets? Any of the big events in my life? If a person like that says that children are a good thing, it carries no weight at all. He had always thought she was a cute girl, and he had tried his best in his own way. But still, a bitter taste filled his mouth and he grimaced, then looked out through the window, and his eyes happened to meet those of a boy on a bicycle. The boy's thin limbs poked out of his t-shirt and shorts, and there was a plastic bag dangling from the handlebars of his bicycle. He gave a look of surprise, then increased his speed and rode away. He must have thought Takiji's grimace was directed at him. Takiji stood up, flustered, but the young man had already disappeared. Whoops. My mistake. He rubbed his head and sat down again. Then he gazed out through the window. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had seen the young man somewhere before. I don't know anyone in this area, and certainly not any children. But somehow I recognize him. Where could I have seen him? Suddenly there was a roar of laughter, and when he looked over, the proprietor's fisherman friends were all clutching their stomachs in hysterics. Noticing Takiji's gaze, the proprietor, still smiling, said, "Sorry, excuse us." Another of the men said, "Pardon, pardon," and bowed his head. Draining the remaining coffee in a single draught, Takiji stood. "I'll leave the payment here. Thank you. I won't come here anymore," Takiji thought. Feeling something akin to irritation, he left the establishment. He and Junko were fighting. She had announced that she was taking a 3-day trip to Kagoshima with the Ladies' Association. Kagoshima was a famously scenic town situated on a bay at the south end of Kyushu, with dramatic views of an active volcano and popular thermal springs. Mrs. Nose suggested we all accompany Mr. Shiba on the trip. He's arranging for a minibus to take us down there, as a thank you for cleaning the dining area, he said, so it won't cost a lot. The Golden Villa Ladies Association, made up of volunteers from the building, was essentially just a fan club for Shiba. They all adored the fellow, who was no more than a hired manager for the convenience store in their building. Mrs. Nose was the president of the association and the esteemed wife of the building's owner, who was Shiba's employer. The primary activity of the group was to help behind the scenes with store operations, which mostly amounted to cleaning the dining area and car park on a rotating basis. Of course, since it was a service to the community, they weren't paid for the work. Junko pitched in happily, but earned not a single yen for her labor. He had voiced a few complaints about that, but she had asked, "Would you rather I were stuck in the apartment all day alone?" So he said nothing more about it. It's important to nurture relationships with friends and colleagues, but probably not to the point where you have to abandon your home for 3 days. What's more, to spend a trip fawning over this young man, isn't that in poor taste? Fawning is an unpleasant way to put it. But yes, you've seen on TV how they follow teen idols on tour? I won't deny it's something like that. Picturing the face of the manager of the convenience store downstairs, Takiji tooted in disapproval. The man had a strange, delicate presence about him. A man like that would prey on a woman without giving it a second thought. I've had to deal with hundreds, maybe thousands of people over the years for work, so I should know. The man's no good, oh, stop it. I've heard this story too many times before. Besides, you said the same thing about Kengo, and isn't he a good person? Kengo was Nanao's husband. He had found some sort of unserious work as a cameraman that kept him flying all over the country. When they met him at the wedding, his hair was longer than Nanao's. They were still married, and Nanao seemed happy, but Takagi wasn't entirely convinced. Wasn't it possible they were giving up on children because the man lacked a stable job? They made a point of declaring that having no children was their choice, but that in itself was just evidence that something was amiss, wasn't it? If an able-bodied adult can't find work at a decent company, then what? Cameraman and convenience store manager. That sort of work is for men who have skipped the rails of society. I ran the factory for Kagami Press. All right, that's enough. Junko snapped. Is it so amazing that you were employed by a big company? Does receiving a promotion make you a great man? That's the only thing you're proud of, and it's meaningless now that you're retired. It's time to let go of all that. Junko looked at him defiantly. Takiji was at a loss for words. There were deep creases running from her nose to her mouth and a couple of discolored patches on her cheek. Her skin was starting to sag, and crow's feet were beginning to assert their presence at the corners of her eyes. But in the midst of all that, her black eyes flickered with their old brilliance, unchanged. In the grip of these contradictory impressions, Takiji wondered, is this really the face of my wife? What happened to the sprightly young woman I knew? Not knowing what to make of Takiji's silence, Junko said, I'm sorry, and bowed her head. I got a little carried away. I only want to take a little trip together with my friends. Shiba was just the icing on the cake, but if he weren't coming, I'd still want to go. I don't do this all the time, so just this once, hold your tongue and let me go. For the second time, Takiji could say nothing but do as you like. The morning of the trip, Junko looked a little uneasy, but she made all the necessary arrangements with her usual determination and departed. Takiji looked down from his balcony as a minibus pulled up in the convenience store car park, and the members of the association began to board. The ladies were all decked out in showy clothes and carefully made up, laughing gaily together as they surrounded Shiba. The men in this building are all fools. Aren't they embarrassed that their wives are all losing their heads over this man who's young enough to be their son? And to think that he was in the same boat. As if he felt Takiji's eyes on him, Shiba glanced up as he was boarding the bus. Their eyes met. I'll take good care of your wife, so don't worry, he called out pleasantly, beaming up at Takiji. The easygoing look on the manager's face infuriated him. The man had some nerve, joking about it like that. I'm not worried about anything at all. Takiji called back, trying hard to mask his twitch of irritation with a semblance of a smile. If he raised his voice in anger now, he'd have lost the battle. Takiji stepped back inside, smiles still plastered to his face. Back in the tidy living room, he sank down onto the sofa and closed his eyes. He remained in that position until the commotion downstairs had faded, and then, once all had returned to quiet, he stood up. He went down to the Tenderness convenience store on the ground floor. A male clerk was attending to customers at the register, and a female clerk was busy restocking items on the dessert shelves. Takiji took a casual look around. Takiji seldom visited convenience stores. It annoyed him that everything was sold at full price, and he also remembered reading an article in a magazine years ago about how the food items in the boxed bento meals were full of additives. Aside from purchasing the occasional canned coffee drink, or maybe a pack of lozenges in order to be allowed to use the toilet, he never went into the places. He had always told Junko and Nanao to use supermarkets and discount stores instead, whenever they could in order to save money. Convenience stores were for the lazy, he said. To those who lived their lives properly, they were of no use. He purchased just the single can of coffee and moved to the dine-in space that Junko and her friends cleaned 3 times daily. Maybe there were members of the group who didn't participate in the trip, or the staff at the store had taken over while they were gone, because the place was as tidy as usual. Vases containing cosmos had been placed in 3 suitable locations. Takiji sniffed, taking a seat at the window counter. Nursing his coffee, he considered how he was going to spend the next 3 days. Perhaps he should get in touch with a few former colleagues and arrange a visit? It was just a few hours to Nagoya on the bullet train. He could suggest a drink that evening at a grill pub in the Higashi Sakura neighborhood, downtown. That might interest a few of them. He was halfway out of his chair, but then sat down again. He had been to Nagoya about a month ago for the funeral of an old mentor of his. There were a number of people who failed to show, even for an event like that, because they were sick in hospital or had settled into retirement. And the ones who did come had nothing to say about the deceased. They just droned on and on about their own physical infirmities and nursing situations with no sense of propriety. Everyone seemed to have become a bit tired and slow somehow, and just thinking of the impressive figures they had cut in their former lives set Takiji's teeth on edge. Even if he contacted the lot of them out of the blue like that, who would take the time? It was likely that not one of them would show up. "I've been leading a dull life, haven't I?" He said it quietly, out loud, and then thought to himself, that's really the problem. He had tried his best to be true to himself, but that clearly wasn't good enough. And what could he do about it now? His wife had left him, his daughter blamed him, and he had no friends around to know his feelings. He felt a presence and turned. A boy had just entered through the side door from the store. Looking at the boy's sunburned face, Takiji let out a short bark of surprise. It was the boy he had seen the other day through the coffee shop window. That was it. He had recognized him because he had seen him so often before, here in the dine-in space. The boy was always here when Takiji went for his evening walk. The boy directed a quick glance his way, and their eyes met again, but it seemed that he didn't remember seeing Takiji before. He looked around the room and took a seat at one of the 4-person tables. He removed a curry bento and a bottle of carbonated fruit juice from his bag and started to eat. A convenience store bento for breakfast on a Saturday morning? Takiji shook his head slightly. What on earth were the boy's parents doing? From what he could tell, the boy was probably still in elementary school. Weren't they concerned about letting their young child eat such a poor breakfast? And just the fact that he'd seen the boy's face often enough to remember it meant that he must be relying on convenience store bento for most of his meals. A growing child should have meals made with love and care and with much more nutritional value. Takiji's thoughts had little effect on the boy. He finished his meal quickly, gathered up his rubbish and dumped it in the bin, then took a portable game console from his bag. He inserted a pair of earphones into his ears and began to play. Sneaking surreptitious glances at the boy's blank face, Takiji bit his lip in frustration. It was utterly deplorable. Convenience store bento and video games on such a beautiful autumn holiday morning. It just wasn't right. There was a peal of laughter, and another group of boys on bicycles rolled into the car park. They parked their bikes in the rack and entered the shop. Soon after, they made their way into the dine-in space. "Look, isn't that Hikaru?" A large boy noticed the young man with the video game and spoke. "Oh yeah, it's Hikaru." The three boys surrounded Hikaru at the four-person table. For a moment, Takiji was relieved that the boys' friends had arrived, until one of them smacked Hikaru on the head. "Hikaru, what are you doing here? If you have free time, you need to practice, practice, practice." Hikaru responded to the chorus of voices with a sullen look. "Go away," he said. "It's just a sports day. Practice, practice, practice is dumb. We want our class to win first place. How can it be dumb to practice?" Listening to them talk, Takiji gleaned that the Sunday after next was the field day for the school the boys attended. Apparently, Hikaru's entire class had been staying late after school to train, but Hikaru hadn't joined them once. Takiji was looking at Hikaru in disapproval, thinking this is no good, when one of the boys piped up with a sneer in his voice. "Your dad will probably be away for work again, anyhow. It's the same every year. He doesn't show up, and you have to have lunch with the teachers in the faculty lounge." "Huh, what? What are you talking about?" One of the other boys interjected. "Hikaru's mum moved out," said the boy with the sneer. "His parents got divorced. His dad always misses special events because of work or something. My mum said he hasn't come once, not even on Parents' Day." "Wow, seriously? Then what about the father-son three-legged race? Our class has to win all the races. My dad bought a new track jacket, and he's really ready this year. Maybe we could pair him up with some teacher? Like Mrs. Noda from the infirmary." "No way. Mrs. Noda's too old, isn't she? Can she run? I want to win, but I'd really like to see that. Mrs. Noda is even fatter than my mom." The boys burst into raucous laughter. "Whoa, that's too funny. I want a photo of that." As Takiji observed quietly from the sidelines, Hikaru's face became visibly red with anger. His hands, still holding his game console, started to tremble. Finally, he slammed it on the table and shouted, "Shut up, all of you. It's none of your business. And it's not funny, so stop your stupid laughing. What's up with you? Don't get so mad over nothing." The boy sitting next to him slung his arm over Hikaru's shoulder, but Hikaru swatted him off violently. At the sound of the slap, the boy's expression shifted. "What the heck, Hikaru? That's messed up. Hey there, sorry about that." "That's our Hikaru for you." Takiji stood up and called out loudly. The children, who had seemed like they were headed towards an explosive situation, paused, flustered by the sudden sound of an adult voice. They looked at Takiji, who smiled back at them. "I'm going to attend field day this year. I'm older than all your parents, but I still know a trick or two, and I think we can win that. What is it? That three-legged race of yours." Hikaru gaped at him. Confirming this out of the corner of his eye, Takiji continued. "I hope it'll be good weather on field day. I'm quite looking forward to it, too." "Oh, okay, you are." The boys gave him a wary look, then left, calling to Hikaru on their way out, "Don't forget to practice." Takiji watched them go, waving goodbye as they rode off on their bikes. What? Came a small voice. Hikaru was looking at him quizzically. Ah, sorry. I probably shouldn't have butted in. He had intended to keep his mouth shut and listen, but then he couldn't help but get involved. He scratched his head in embarrassment and said, I just got so annoyed listening to them. So I made up that strange story. I shouldn't have. What was he thinking, getting so worked up over a children's quarrel? Hikaru's shoulders relaxed. Thank you, he said. Takiji looked at him in surprise. The boy was smiling ever so slightly. I was surprised, but those boys were totally shocked. It was funny to see all of their faces. Thank you. Hikaru took the game console from the table and stowed it in his bag. It'll be okay. I'll just tell them that Grandpa got sick and couldn't come. He started to leave, but Takiji called out to him. Wait a sec. Would it be really bad if I came? To the field day. Hikaru turned back towards him. Takiji looked at his round eyes. Are you sure I can't come? He tried again. I'm retired, so I have lots of free time. To pretend to be your grandpa, see? I don't need you to feel sorry for me or anything. I'm used to it, said Hikaru. Well, bye. The boy raised one hand lightly and left. You're a fool, said Takiji to himself, watching the boy's bicycle leaving the car park. It should have been obvious to him that he'd be rejected. Was the boy supposed to take the ravings of a strange old man seriously? He should have just scolded them all for fighting. Except, he thought, it wasn't pity that had caused him to call out to those boys. He was surprised to learn it was so painful for the child that his parents couldn't come to the school field day. Takiji, as Nanao was only too happy to remind him, had no real memory of actually attending any of her field days. On the other hand, he had a definite recollection of skipping one in favor of a round or two of golf to entertain clients. Of course, Junko had been up early in the morning for their daughter's field day each year, making a picnic lunch for the event, and she would take the girls' grandparents as well. So at least his daughter never had the experience of eating lunch alone with the staff. But somehow, Hikaru's face and the face of his daughter in her youth seemed to overlap in his mind. Nanao might very well have had the same distraught look on her face as this boy, waiting for a father who never came. Takiji tossed his empty can of coffee into the rubbish and returned to his apartment. The following day, a little after noon, the situation changed. He went down to the ground floor to get a can of coffee, and who should be standing in front of the lift but Hikaru? Oh, good. I found you. Hikaru smiled. Why? Takiji asked. You looked sort of familiar, so I thought you might be from the building. I hung around here, thinking I might see you. Hikaru said this a little proudly, and then he looked away for a moment. Maybe you can come to field day with me after all? Takiji murmured in surprise. You changed your mind. Why? They all came to my house this morning and wanted to practice together. They didn't believe me about yesterday. I tried to ignore them, but they were really bugging me. Hikaru shrugged. Finally, I told them not to worry about it, that we were doing a special secret training routine, just the two of us. So, if it's okay with you, I was wondering, could we? Hikaru looked up at Takiji nervously. Just the three-legged race would be enough. It's in the afternoon, so you'd only have to come for a little while then. Might I come in the morning as well? Takiji said, and Hikaru looked at him in surprise. I haven't been to a field day in ages. I wonder if you'd let me come to yours and enjoy it as your grandfather, just for that one day. You're sure you wouldn't mind? Hikaru's cheeks blushed red. Looking at his face made Takiji very happy somehow. Someone is glad that I'll be there. Good. Now, I have a favor to ask you. You've told your friends that we're doing some kind of special training together in secret, haven't you? Shall we practice a little together starting now? Really? Yes. Let's do it. Hikaru's voice was suddenly sounding a whole lot louder. Well, then, wait over there in the dine-in space for me while I change into some gym clothes. And I'll need trainers for this. With light steps, Takiji returned to his room and dug around in the closet. When they'd moved here, they decided to declutter their lives, and he had ditched all his suits and golf clothing. But there was probably at least an old tracksuit around somewhere. Got it. He pulled out a tracksuit that hadn't seen the light of day for a long time and put it on. He also stuffed an old necktie into his pocket to use as a tie for the three-legged race, and after wrestling for a while with the trainers, he returned to Hikaru. Oimatsu Park was a quiet, peaceful place near the apartment building. With no shortage of free time on his hands, Takiji had wandered over to the library in the park once or twice, but this was the first time he'd come here for the purpose of exercise. He looked at it with fresh eyes. People were running or walking everywhere. A group of foreigners posed for a photo with an old man on a red cargo bike. He had seen the fellow around the neighborhood more than once and always wondered what his story was. Takiji looked at him curiously for a moment, wondering if he might be some sort of local celebrity, but that wasn't important right now. He shook his head and shifted his attention to the boy. First things first. Standing by the mannequin piece fountain in the center of the park, Takiji and Hikaru turned to each other and made their introductions. Hikaru Minakata, 5th grader at Moji Elementary School Number 2. Pleased to meet you. Takiji watched as the boy bowed his head in formal greeting. He seemed a little small for a 5th grade student. His face was tanned from the sun and looked healthy. Takiji saw an intelligent gleam in the boy's eyes as they met his own. Takiji Otsuka. I'm going to be your grandfather, so would it be all right if I called you Hikaru? Sure. And I guess I should call you Grandpa. Of course. Nodding, Takiji repressed a smile. Grandpa. It had a nice ring to it. He had thought the day would never come that he would be addressed in that way. Well, Hikaru, let's get started on our training, shall we? We can use this instead of the usual hachimaki. He took out the necktie and used it to bind the boy's skinny ankle to his own. He took an awkward pleasure in the childlike activity. Are you good at sports, Grandpa? I used to be good, but now, well, I wonder. He had given up golf and hadn't done anything remotely resembling exercise in years. His belly had started to protrude and his blood sugar was high enough that he had started taking a little walk in the evenings. Well, in any case, let's give it a try and see, shall we? Today we'll just focus on our breathing. The two of them walked around the park grounds until the sun went down. As they walked, they talked about everything that came to mind. that Hikaru's father worked as a care manager at a nursing home, that the staff there was short-handed, so everyone was always busy, and how that was why Hikaru often had to eat alone. I was making a fried egg and I burned myself. So after that, my father said I shouldn't cook while I was alone. Hikaru still had the scar, like a pink snake on his right arm. The frying pan tipped over, he said regretfully. And that's why the convenience store bento? My father says the dine-in space there is clean, and there are always grown-ups watching, so it's safe. Takiji murmured. With all the store employees and apartment residents coming and going so frequently, that place would certainly be less dangerous for a child. Sometimes I get food to go, but when I eat by myself at home, somehow it doesn't taste so good. That's very true. Takiji nodded seriously. He knew well enough the empty feeling of eating alone. But although Hikaru felt lonely spending time by himself, it seemed he didn't blame his father for that. When he spoke of his father, not even a hint of a shadow darkened his face. He takes care of a lot of elderly people, but he remembers everything about everyone so well. It's like there's a computer in his head. Like Mr. Takegawa needs to have his food pureed, and Mrs. Okita has a rubber allergy. People's lives depend on him, so he can't just do whatever and think it will be okay. Hikaru's father clearly believed in his work, and Hikaru could see that clearly in him. Takiji watched the boy's face, radiant with pride as he told his father's story. They were a good pair, this father and son. Takiji knew it was an extremely difficult task to manage a full-time job, childcare and housework, all perfect and all at the same time. Like many others, he had lived his life entrusting everything other than his job to Junko. So it seemed obvious that there was much more to Hikaru's father than met the eye. Even so, he wanted to tell the man that his boy needed more care. Work was important, but the boy's field day came only once a year. He should be able to find at least enough time to show his face there. He's probably completely unaware of this, Takiji thought. You need to work and earn a living, or it's no way to raise a child. An old phrase came to mind. A child must see his father's back, bent in hard work. In the grip of such concerns, there was no space to consider a child's feelings. He had been that way himself. He had believed that earning money and leading a financially unencumbered life was the #1 priority. It would never have occurred to him to prioritize his daughter's field day over a day at work. Let's take first place in this three-legged race, shall we? Takiji smiled at Hikaru. And try to top your class, too. Shall we do that? Then you'd really have something to tell your father. Hikaru gave him a shy smile. They had been working hard on their pacing for a while now, and sweat was running down the boy's temples. Takiji's tracksuit, too, was clinging to his back. His calves were throbbing and would probably be sore in a day or two. He looked around. The sun had nearly set. The horizon was a blend of orange and purple, while far off in the opposite direction the sky was beginning to turn black. The night's first star was twinkling above them. Well, now it's getting dark. Shall we call it a day? It's already evening? Hey, do you think maybe we can practice together again another time? Of course. If it suits you, let's make a date to meet here late afternoon tomorrow. Takiji was about to add only if you really want to, that is, but before he could speak, the boy's face lit up. "All right," he said happily. "That's okay. Then I'll come right after school. Will you?" "Well then." Takiji felt a flush of emotion at the boy's response. "Then it's a date. I'll be waiting for you." Takiji returned to his apartment suffused with a pleasant tiredness. Entering the deserted apartment, he felt a little of the old loneliness, but calling to mind Hikaru's happy face, he soon forgot all about it. The following evening, Takiji was putting on his trainers in the front hall when Junko returned from her trip. "Oh, where are you going dressed like that?" Still holding her suitcase as well as a paper bag from a souvenir shop, she looked him up and down in surprise. She seemed perplexed to see him in the tracksuit, which was hardly part of his regular repertoire. She asked again, "Is something going on?" "Not particularly," he replied. "Just going out for a little bit." "A little bit where?" "Anywhere, really." "It doesn't matter," he said with deliberate carelessness, leaving the apartment and stepping into the lift. When he exited on the ground floor, he noticed that a number of the ladies hadn't returned to their apartments yet and were still standing around in the lobby, talking amongst themselves in evident amusement. "Oh, it's Mrs. Otsuka's husband." Mrs. Nose, the president of the Ladies' Association, noticed him and bowed slightly in greeting. Takiji didn't know what kind of games they had played on the trip, but she seemed tired. He gave her a polite smile. "Welcome back. Did you enjoy the trip?" "Yes, thanks. We had a good tour. We apologized to all the husbands for the inconvenience, but we're very grateful to them for sending us off so willingly." Mrs. Nose spoke deferentially and bowed her head, perhaps more politely than necessary, but Takiji waved her off, saying, "Please, don't mention it." Perhaps Junko had told them that she had encountered objections from her husband. She had never been an indiscreet woman, but he wasn't sure about this new Junko. He hated to think that way, but it couldn't be helped. "Well, I'm off for a walk," he said. "See you later." He left the lobby without dropping his smile. Still, a dark feeling was welling up inside him. It made him mad, and there was nothing he could do about it. For all the smiles and apologies, he thought he'd probably be angry when Junko returned from her trip, and sure enough, he was. Was this what Nanao meant when she said he kept her mother under lock and key? No, that wasn't the whole story. Junko had to share some of the blame. Her conduct may have been perfectly natural to herself and their daughter, but from Takiji's perspective, she had just suddenly begun to indulge her every whim out of the blue, without the slightest explanation. Damn it. He had given up tobacco all of 10 years ago, but at times like this he just wanted a smoke. He was thinking maybe he should just go have a beer at a pub somewhere when he heard a voice. "Grandpa." He gave a start, and there was Hikaru standing at the entrance to the park. He was wearing gym clothes and beaming from ear to ear. "Hello. Have you been waiting?" "Nope, I just got here." "Thank you for coming," the boy said as Takiji drew closer. "I don't have as much time on weekdays. Let's start our training quick." Takiji patted the boy on the head and noticed he was already sweating. He must have run all the way here, he thought, and the emotional storm that had been raging inside him began to subside. Let's forget about the problems at home and spend some time with this child. Takiji smiled. After that, for days to come, he spent his evenings in Oimatsu Park, training with Hikaru for the three-legged race. The training was intense. Takiji suffered from bad muscle cramps all over, but the pain in his legs was the worst. He covered them with compresses, but after his bath, exhaustion would overtake him, and he'd barely manage to finish his dinner before crawling into bed. There wasn't even time for his evening drink. During the daytime, he would just sprawl on the sofa in a desperate attempt to recover his strength for the next training session. "I'm dead on my feet," he thought. That's the perfect description of it. But when he was with Hikaru, he forgot his exhausted body completely. Besides, he didn't want to give up the training sessions. He had become too committed to helping the boy take first place. It was hard to believe. Takiji lay on the sofa, eyes closed, wearing the tracksuit that had already become like a uniform to him. The idea that he'd be working himself half to death over a child's field day, and the child of a complete stranger to boot. If his former self could only see him now, he'd be shocked beyond words. "You know, dear, you've been acting funny lately." As he was chuckling to himself, he heard a voice and opened his eyes. Junko was seated at the dining table, giving him a dubious look. "Oh, are you home today? I told you, today's my day off at the supermarket." "And the Ladies' Association?" "They said it wasn't my turn." Junko heaved a deep sigh. "What's going on with you?" she asked listlessly. "Are you still mad about my trip?" "Huh? Oh, that. No, I'd forgotten all about that." When he was with Hikaru, his anger had just evaporated somehow. He wondered if he had attacked the training sessions with such fervor because it allowed him to let go of such fruitless burdens. "I'm just doing what I want, the same way you're doing what you want. Even so, it seems like you've changed somehow. I could say the same about you." Junko sighed again, and an uncomfortable silence descended upon them. As the seconds ticked by, Takiji's frustration grew. He had been completely unable to understand Junko since they moved here. He was the one who wanted to ask what was going on with her. "I'm going to take a little nap now," he said. "And you should do whatever you want too, as always." Junko didn't reply. Takiji wondered if his remark had come off as sarcastic, but decided it was okay to leave things as they were. He closed his eyes again and fell asleep in spite of himself. He awoke to the buzzing of his phone, which he had set as an alarm clock. He got up and did a few deep stretches. He looked around, but there was no sign of Junko in the room or anywhere in the apartment. She seemed to have gone out. "So, this is what it's come to," Takiji said to himself and laughed bitterly. He couldn't help but think that the old Junko wouldn't have left the house after a conversation like that. But maybe that was just his own self-centered emotions having their say. Standing in the kitchen, he drank down a cup of cold barley tea, then headed to the front hall. He put on his trainers and hurried to Oimatsu Park, where Hikaru was waiting for him as always. After their training sessions, Takiji had fallen into the habit of walking Hikaru back to the apartment building. He would return to his room, and the boy would buy a bento at Tenderness for dinner. It seemed that Hikaru had been extra hungry of late, so he was now buying 2 bento instead of 1. When he heard that, Takiji wanted to invite the boy up to his apartment for dinner, But he felt that such a decision wasn't entirely up to him alone. Takichi's repertoire only included 2 items, fried rice and fried noodles, so he would have no choice but to ask Junko to prepare Hikaru's meal. Furthermore, he hadn't met the boy's father yet or been properly introduced. The plan was to do that on the man's next day off. "See you tomorrow, Grandpa." "Yes, see you soon." With that, he returned home to the silent apartment. The lights were off, and in the kitchen Takiji's glass was still sitting where he had left it. "What? She's not home yet at this hour." She had said she didn't have work or volunteer duties, so what was she up to? Was she determined to make a fool out of him, staying out so late without contacting him? Well, for now he'd take a shower at least. But going to the bedroom to change, Takiji received a shock. There in the darkened room was Junko, lying in bed and crying out as if in the throes of a nightmare. "What? We're here." He raised his voice involuntarily. "Oh, it's you. Yes, dear. I think I'm sick." Junko's response was interrupted by a deep coughing fit. Her voice was so hoarse she sounded like a different person. "But what happened? You weren't at all like that earlier today, were you?" "I haven't been feeling so well since then." When he thought about it, she had seemed out of sorts, hadn't she? She was sighing a lot and had sounded distracted and listless. Takiji had thought she was just in a mood. "Why didn't you tell me? I could have taken you to the hospital right then." "I thought I'd feel better if I got some sleep," she said. "But we're old now, aren't we? It isn't that easy." He turned on the light and looked at Junko's face. Perhaps she had a fever? Her cheeks were bright red. "Okay, first things first. Let me take your temperature." Where's the thermometer?" "Not here. It disappeared somewhere when we moved." He wasn't sure what to do next. Takiji and Junko had both been blessed with strong constitutions, and neither of them had ever been bedridden. When Nanao got sick, Junko was always the one to care for her, so Takiji had no experience nursing anyone. "Should I call for an ambulance?" "What are you saying?" "It's not that serious. I just need to keep warm and sleep, and I'll be fine." Junko tried to laugh, but dissolved into a violent coughing fit. Takiji became suddenly anxious that she would start to vomit. "Weren't you supposed to cool the head of a feverish person? Maybe he could use ice cubes or something. But was there anything like that in the house?" "I need something to cool your head." "What should I do?" Junko just said, "Down below." "Down below?" "Down below where?" "They sell frozen bottles of water downstairs. I can put them under my arms." Bottles under her arms? Not on her head? He didn't understand, but Junko seemed to think it would be fine. In any case, Takiji grabbed his wallet and hurried downstairs to do as he was told. He passed through the dine-in space on his way to the convenience store. Hikaru was still there, eating his bento dinner. "Hey, Grandpa. What's going on?" "Oh dear, well, when I returned to my apartment, my wife was in bed. She said she didn't feel well." Takiji explained he was looking for some kind of ice pack to cool her down, and Hikaru stood up. "That's rough," he said. He stuffed the remains of his bento into his mouth. "I can help." "No, it's okay. I'm a really good nurse. Because when anything happens to my father, I take care of him." Hikaru threw away his rubbish, and Takiji entered the side door of Tenderness with the boy at his heels. Does she have an appetite? I'm not sure. Now that you mention it, I don't know if she had lunch this afternoon. She may have left her toast this morning, too. It's possible she hasn't eaten anything. You don't know. Hikaru looked surprised. Sorry, Takiji replied, scratching his head. He had never paid much attention to Junko's appetite. If you want an ice pack, she must have a fever, right? Oh, I forgot. We don't have a thermometer, so I'll have to go to the pharmacy after this. The pharmacy was at least a 10-minute walk from the apartments, wasn't it? For a moment, Takiji thought it would probably be best just to go back to the apartment, but Hikaru broke in. They sell them, he said. They have them here, I'm sure. Without hesitation, Hikaru led him straight to the household items. Takiji had never so much as glanced at the products here, since he didn't think it was economical. Lined up on the shelves were hot water bottles, flasks, thermometers, and the like. Oh, they have all this. When he looked more closely, there were all sorts of products: nappies, aprons, electrolyte solutions. Takiji was surprised and wondered why. Probably because it's all older people upstairs, Hikaru said. It makes life easier for them, doesn't it, Mr. Manager? Hikaru raised his voice towards the dessert aisle. Shiba's head popped up. His hands were full of cakes, so apparently he had been restocking. Shiba smiled gently and said, "That's right. We serve the residents of the building, and we also have quite a few elderly customers among our regulars in general. We give careful consideration to our stock, so they won't run into trouble in a time of need. By the way, our stores in student neighborhoods carry a much wider selection of stationery and desserts, too." Takiji nodded. It was undoubtedly convenient. He put an ice pack and a thermometer in his basket, then added a few bottles of electrolyte beverages. He took a few bottles of frozen tea, too, as per Junko's instructions. She said she'd put them under her arms, but maybe she was just delirious from the fever? Takiji spoke quietly, almost to himself, but Hikaru spoke up. "It's easy to bring down a fever that way," he said. "There are a lot of large blood vessels in the armpit. Is that right?" He was impressed that Hikaru had such information in his repertoire. "Next is food," said Hikaru. "I recommend these." He was holding a heat and serve bag of rice porridge. "They have these too?" "Grandpa, why are you so surprised about everything?" Hirako gave a little laugh. Takiji was slightly embarrassed and shrugged. "I guess I've never really made proper use of a convenience store. I'll admit, though, they're unexpectedly convenient. I'll have to change my thinking." When he first looked at the apartment, he remembered. The agent had mentioned how handy it was to have a convenience store downstairs. At the time he had snorted and wondered exactly what was so convenient about having a shop right downstairs, with people coming and going at all hours, nonstop. At the very least, they'd have to put up with a terrible racket all the time, he'd thought. In actuality, things turned out to be very different, and the building had decent security, so he didn't have to worry about strangers going in and out. In light of his current situation, he suddenly appreciated the value of this convenient store the agent had touted. "If you have these, you don't have to worry about meals," said Hikaru. No matter how little he knew about cooking, he could at least heat up a bag of food. He took the porridge, whereupon Hikaru said, "And this, too." He looked. It was an egg custard. Apparently, the boy had found it in the section with the bento boxes. Egg custard. I'm telling you, I recommend it. Hikaru grinned as Takiji looked at him curiously. Junko's fever climbed steadily as the night progressed. She started to shiver violently and complained of the cold, so he covered her with blankets and had her drink the electrolyte beverages as often as he could. He filled the hot water bottle with ice, replacing it frequently, and when the icebox in the freezer was empty, he ran downstairs to purchase more. "How is your wife doing?" Shiba asked with a look of concern. He seemed to be taking the night shift. Takiji replied that she was conscious, and he thought she would be okay. "Let me know if there's anything that I can do," Shiba said, his voice gentle but firm. "I'm always here." The man that he had dismissed as so shallow and strange smiled at him. At least he had a certain trustworthy quality, Takiji thought, or maybe he just felt that way because he was so desperately out of his depth trying to care for his own wife. "Thank you." He bowed his head in acknowledgement and hurried home. Dozing by Junko's side, he kept a careful watch over her. In the middle of the night, she broke out in a sudden sweat, and he mopped it up. When she told him she was hot, he wiped the back of her neck with a towel soaked in cold water. "That feels good," she said, smiling for the first time. "That's much better. I may be past the peak now. I think the fever will start to go down soon, too." "How could you know that?" Takiji asked. But he heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that her pained expression had eased. "Don't you remember when Nanao used to get sick?" Junko replied. "I'd tell her that when she started to sweat it meant the bad germs had fled, and she'd soon be on the mend." A little of the old firmness had returned to her voice. "Maybe I do. Oh, wait, that's right. I thought that was some sort of superstition." If there's something you want to say, just say it." Junko seemed hot, so he opened the bedroom window a little. A slight breeze and some moonlight spilled around the edges of the heavy curtains that darkened the room. He spread the curtains a little more, and a milky glow flowed into the room. The gentle light touched Junko's face as she lay in the bed. Indeed, her face seemed calmer than before. As she had predicted, it looked like she was past the peak. "You're not sleepy?" she asked him. "I'm okay for now. Besides, my schedule happens to be wide open again tomorrow. It won't hurt anyone if I oversleep a little." Takiji spoke in a playful voice, and Junko smiled. Then she lowered her voice and said, "Remember when Nami passed away?" "Yes, that was very sad." Nami Toyota was a friend from Junko's school days. Takiji had also come to know her quite well. She was smart and energetic, a born leader. She had a way with words, too, and had bested Takiji in verbal exchanges more times than he could count. She was a caring soul, and had even helped the two of them through some marital disputes. She had actively pursued a career at a time when the working world was still dominated by men, but for a woman like her it seemed natural. Ever since she was young, Nami had always said that she was married to her work, but just before her 60th birthday, she married a man her own age. She said they decided to get together because they were both unwed and getting up there in years, but it was easy for all to see that they made a great pair. From then on, the two of them were going to spend the rest of their lives doing exactly what they wanted to do, together as a couple. They'd do their bucket list. Nami, who had taken early retirement, related her many dreams to Takiji and his wife, and even showed them the notebook where she had collected them all. Touring the tombs of the royals in Egypt, viewing the northern lights in Finland, staying at an undersea hotel in Dubai, and so on. They wanted to make his and hers beer steins, too, and challenge themselves to run a full marathon. But a month before Takiji and his wife moved to Mijiko, Nami died. She had cancer. The cancer was found shortly after Nami was married, and she was hospitalized. After an endless series of surgeries and hospitalizations, most of Nami's dreams remained unfulfilled. When Takiji and his wife received the news and rushed off to the hospital, they found Nami lying in bed, weak and withered, with the exception of her eyes, which were still burning bright. I couldn't do any of it. I had so much, but now it's all for nothing. In Nami's hand was the notebook with her list of unfulfilled dreams. When Nami passed away, I started wondering when I was going to die, Junko said. No matter how you look at it, you have to admit we're pretty old. That's why we talked about this being our final home and moved here. But do you honestly think of your life as being so near its end? Takiji was at a loss for words. He was strong of body, and he hadn't once suffered a serious illness of any sort. Death and disease seemed like faraway things to him. But when he looked around him, it wasn't so easy to say. He had lost friends already, and colleagues were even now battling serious illness. There was the acquaintance at his mentor's funeral, too, with his narrative of all the troubles attending the onset of old age. But that had nothing to do with him. Or at least, he had managed to look the other way and avoid the subject. Since Nami passed away, I've become quite familiar with death. There's nothing wrong with me physically right now, but you never know when that could change, isn't that true? So I thought I'd try to write a list of my own, a list of dreams like Nami did. Things I've always wanted to do but haven't done. Things I want to do before I die. Like going to work, like drinks with colleagues, like grumbling together with them about the job, even. Bit by bit, Junko unspooled her story. She wanted to live a new life in this new land they had found. The same way dear Nami was looking forward to her life after retirement, I was looking forward to my life after we moved. I couldn't help but wonder what I'd do if I ended up like she did, so I suppose I was just a little anxious to get started. Why didn't you tell me? Takiji asked. Junko was silent for a little while. Nanao scolded me. She said that I shouldn't talk as if I were preparing for my own funeral. She said that Nami's death was pulling me under. I wondered if she was right, and I never found the right time to talk to you. It was really bad of me. Junko lapsed into silence. With a forlorn smile on her face, bathed in moonlight, she seemed suddenly older. Takiji looked down at the backs of his own wrinkled hands. When had those large dark spots appeared? He passed his hands over his cheeks, and the skin there was slack. That's right, isn't it? It's the same for me too. Both his legs were throbbing and plastered with compresses. Have you done everything on your list? He asked. Well, Junko let out a sigh. At first, I was able to do everything I had thought of. I checked off a lot of boxes. But lately, I don't know. I started to wonder if I was doing the right thing. Junko continued. There were a lot of dreams on her friend Nami's list that couldn't be done alone. They were all things to be done together with her husband, Tetsuya. When she remembered that, she started to think that she might have made a mistake about what to do first. Takiji looked at her quietly, waiting for her to continue, and Junko nodded. I should have talked with you properly when we moved here. I should have told you first about my list instead of Nanao. I don't know. When we first moved here, I was full of hope for my own second life. If you had talked to me about Nami's list back then, I might have just yelled at you not to talk about depressing things. Takiji was being honest. If Junko had told him she wanted to make a list like Nami's, he probably would have tried to put a stop to it and been harder on her than Nanao. He would have told her it was weird to go around imitating the deceased. But now he listened instead, quietly taking in what his wife was saying. He was beginning to understand everything that had happened up to that moment, as if the tangled threads were at last coming free. I had a lot of fun on this last trip. Isn't that what you wanted? We all took hot sand baths, soaked in the open-air spa, and ate until we couldn't eat anymore. Then we talked until we fell asleep. Just like schoolgirls, Takiji laughed. Junko laughed as well, but her smile quickly turned forlorn. It was tremendous fun. But, well, just as we were saying it was time for bed, Mrs. Nose told us all that she was stepping down from her post as president of the Ladies' Association. Her husband had to go on dialysis, she said. Takiji called up a mental image of Mrs. Nose's husband, the owner of their apartment. He was a stout man who reminded Takiji of Hote, one of the 7 lucky gods and the patron saint of happiness. He'll have to go to the hospital twice a week. Until the trip, Mrs. Nose had relied on his kindness and did more or less as she pleased. She was always out and about, and at times, she'd leave him and be away for as much as half a month, she said. Mrs. Nose had thought the two of them could go anywhere at any time, Junko explained, but now they could go nowhere at all. Why had she let her time with him become an afterthought? She had wept quietly into her futon and told the group that this was her last trip with them, that from then on she wanted to spend more time together with her husband. When I heard that, you see, it really made me think that maybe I should have talked more with you, and the two of us. The two of us should have made our bucket list together. That if I check off only my own items from the list, I might regret it someday. You see, Junko looked at Takiji. That's why I seem different. I'm sorry. No, I was wrong too. I know I've caused you all sorts of trouble up to now. He bowed his head to her. That's how it came to this. He knew himself that he could be a hard-headed and cranky old fool. I thought about what Nanao said to me over and over again. I wasn't doing it consciously, not at all, but now I think I was holding you back. Shackling you. That's what I did to you. At Junko's words, Takiji looked up. Husbands are raised by their wives, she continued. So I was the one who trained you to be that way. A very long time ago, when I was still young, I thought it was great that you had such a strong sense of duty, and that you were so passionate about your work. I even wanted it to stay like that forever. When other people said that you were working too hard, I kept quiet. My husband can handle it, I told them. Junko coughed. When Takiji held out her drink for a sip, she slowly raised herself to a sitting position and took the bottle from him. Are you okay? He asked, and she nodded. Holding the bottle in her hand, she took a deep breath, her shoulders relaxing as she exhaled. Year by year, your passion for your work grew, and soon you no longer seemed to notice your family. I started to think it was a weakness rather than a strong point. It's a selfish thing to admit, isn't it? That I was upset by the kind of person you were when I was the one who had encouraged you to be that way. Was that what had happened? Takiji's thoughts traveled back to that time, so long ago. You love your work so much, I haven't a care in the world. His wife had said that to him one day, a smile on her face, her belly big with child, and he swore to himself he'd work harder and harder. I guess I forgot about that, didn't I? He was talking to himself, but Junko nodded. How many decades have we been together now? She asked. Just as I raised you to be that way, there are parts of me somewhere that were created by you. Husbands and wives raise each other. Is that how it was? Is that how it is? Takiji thought about it. Junko's words lodged somewhere deep within him. Raise each other. You always find the perfect way to describe these things, don't you? He could never have come up with a phrase like that himself. When he expressed his admiration, a mischievous grin crept over Junko's face. Actually, I stole it from Mrs. Noza's husband. That's what he told her when she came crying to him for forgiveness. I like you free, so I raised you that way. You have nothing to be sorry for. I did it. Hey, that's a great love story, isn't it? It is. When we heard it at the inn, we all made a great big fuss. We thought it was wonderful. The two of them laughed as if they had shared a private joke. Then Junko took another sip of her drink and lay down again. Dear, let's make a bucket list together, the two of us. Okay. Yes, that would be good, I think. Takiji thought about what he would put on his own list of dreams. He wanted a hobby most of all. Something he could really get lost in and, if possible, something he could do together with Junko. Also, he wanted to travel. He couldn't even remember the last time they went somewhere fun as a couple. But the most important thing was probably to take first place at Hikaru's field day. And, that's right, he had almost forgotten. He needed to tell Junko that she had a temporary grandchild. Junko. Oh, is she asleep again? Junko had slipped into a peaceful sleep, her blanket rising and falling in a slow rhythm together with her breath. He put a gentle hand to her forehead to confirm that her temperature had returned to normal. Takiji closed the window and drew the curtains, then slipped into bed. When Takiji awoke, Junko was still asleep in the bed next to him. Checking the bedside clock, he discovered that he had slept 30 minutes longer than usual. Now I know I'm getting old, he chuckled to himself. In my younger days, I could sleep until any time of the day. He got out of bed carefully, trying not to wake Junko, and left the bedroom. He got dressed quickly and was at work in the kitchen when Junko appeared. She seemed a little unsteady, but her complexion was good. He asked her how she was doing. My throat still hurts a little, but I'm feeling much better." She gave a little fist pump. "Anyway, I'm sorry I overslept. You probably don't have to work today, right? Maybe you should just sleep in." "There's no time. I have to cook." "Don't worry about it. I'll take care of that this morning," said Takiji. Her mouth fell open in surprise at his words. "You? Cooking?" "Uh-huh. But don't get your hopes up. I'm just going to try to do something with this rice porridge. You just sit." Junko brightened up a little. "I'll just go wash my face then," she said, and disappeared into the bathroom. Takiji went back to work. "Will it really taste all right?" Takiji murmured to himself uneasily, then quickly corrected himself. "No, it'll be fine. Hikaru had recommended it, hadn't he? The boy had said it was super good. Washing my face was so refreshing. Oh, what a wonderful smell." Returning to the kitchen, Junko took a deep breath. Seeing her response, Takiji took heart. "Well, it's ready. Let's eat." Takiji carried the clay pot from the stove to the dining table. He had made an egg porridge. When he removed its lid, steam rose from the clay pot, carrying the rich aroma of the broth. "Doesn't that look delicious?" Junko exclaimed. "How did you make it, dear?" "Well, we won't know if it's any good until we've tasted it." With a porcelain spoon, he ladled the porridge into a shallow bowl and passed it to Junko first. She had always been sensitive to temperature, so she blew on it for a while to cool it down, then inhaled a mouthful directly from the bowl. She exclaimed. "It's delicious. It's really delicious." "Oh, really?" Takiji filled his own bowl and took a sip. The rice had dissolved fully into the porridge so that it was smooth and gentle, with the rich flavor of dashi broth. It would be soothing enough, even with Junko's sore throat. "It's not bad, is it?" "Not bad? It's really delicious." "How did you make it?" "I didn't realize you knew how to make dashi and the like," Junko said, and Takiji puffed out his chest in pride. "It's semi-homemade." "Eh?" "I put a steamed egg custard from the convenience store into a heat-and-serve porridge." "Isn't that what you'd call semi-homemade?" He had stirred the porridge and egg custard together in the clay pot and heated them. Then he had added some chopped green onions, which they also sold at the store, for a finishing touch of color. "You can also do it in the microwave," Hikaru had told him. "When I make it for my father, I use a microwave pot." The boy had spoken with such confidence that he had tried it, and it was surprisingly good. "I used to make fun of convenience stores, but this was actually quite convenient," Takiji said earnestly, taking another sip of the porridge. "The manager said he'd always be there if I needed anything." I liked that. Whenever he came, there would be someone there, ready to help. Just a few simple words, but they gave him such peace of mind. "I'm glad you said that about Mr. Shiba. He's truly a good person." "Oh, now I see. You asked Mr. Shiba about the porridge, didn't you? How to make it?" This is the sort of thing he would think up. He looked at Junko and thought for a while before he answered. "Actually, it was my grandson. And well, we could say he's your grandson as well." "What? What are you talking about?" Takiji laughed as Junko looked at him in confusion, then began to explain the story of Hikaru from the beginning. Hikaru's field day arrived comfortably with perfect autumn weather. The sun was shining gently, and a crisp breeze was blowing. Takiji, sporting a new tracksuit, headed to the boys' elementary school together with Junko, her arms full of bento lunches for their picnic. "Are you okay, dear? You didn't sleep much last night, did you?" I'm fine. Ready, willing, and able." That morning he had risen early and gone for a run. His body felt exceptionally nimble, possibly because he had gone for a massage the previous day. He was in peak condition. "I just wasn't sure what to do. I hope it's okay for us to go." The previous day, Hikaru's father, Akihiro, had called to say that he had been able to get away from work for the event. A little before that, Takiji was finally able to go and meet Akihiro properly, and they had talked in some detail about everything. As Takiji had imagined from Hikaru's comments, Akihiro was serious and steady and a kind father. Also, as expected, he wasn't aware of his son's feelings regarding the field day. He had been dejected to hear about his son's loneliness, but somehow, it seemed, he had managed to get the day off. Takiji had told him at the time that if the two of them could participate, father and son together, nothing would be better than that, and that he hoped they would enjoy the field day. But as he was about to hang up the phone, Akihiro had urged him to come. His son was dead set on taking first place in the three-legged race with Mr. Otsuka, he said, and if he didn't come, there would be trouble. "Did you tell me his actual grandparents had passed away?" Junko asked. "If that's the case, maybe he'll let us stand in for them as a couple." She was even more excited than Takiji about participating in something as far removed from their everyday lives as an elementary school field day. When Takiji had opened his eyes that morning, she was already up and bustling around the kitchen, happily cooking for the event. Then he recalled that she had always made exquisite bento lunches for Nanao, who had adored them as a schoolgirl. Mr. Otsuka. When they arrived at the school gates, which were clogged with a chaotic mass of parents and guardians, Akihiro was waiting for them. He ran up to Takiji and Junko, bowing his head and saying, "Thank you for what you have done." No, it's the other way around. "We're very grateful to you. Grandpa, Grandma." At the sound of his voice, they looked and saw Hikaru running towards them. The sight of his ear-to-ear grin brought smiles to all of their faces. "Listen, dear. Did you hear that? I'm Grandma." Junko's cheeks flushed as Takiji nodded. "Hikaru, today you're going to take first place with your grandfather." "We sure will. Let's do it." "Hooray!" Hikaru lifted a fist into the air, and Takiji joined him. Looking up at his raised hand, he saw the blue sky, with not a cloud in sight. It was the beginning of his second life.